Welcome back to the channel. We're in crazy times, friends. We're in crazy times. Last night, Russian President Vladimir Putin declared war on Ukraine. He's classified it as authorizing a military operation, which was a full-scale invasion. So he has invaded. He also, as he did that, threatened every other country on Earth with possibly the worst threat you could give anybody. If you intervene, you will see consequences that have never before been seen in history. Well, what could he be talking about? The only thing I can imagine when you say something like that and you're a global superpower is that you are referring to a large-scale nuclear attack, or you are referring to biological or chemical attack, or you're referring to a very large-scale cyber attack. So those are the things that he has basically threatened any country with should they intervene. And I think people should take that threat very seriously, because many people, including myself, did not think he would actually proceed with this. We thought it was going to be a show of force leading to diplomatic resolutions and more than likely leading to Ukraine agreeing that they would not join NATO. I still think that would have been the smart decision. You know, if they had just come to the agreement, we will not join NATO, we will never do that, even though I know that would have gone against what they've been working toward. It could have prevented war. Now, you know, you don't normally want to bend your will to a country like Russia doing things by force like this, but this is the world we live in, right? This is the world we live in. Diplomatic solutions have to be met, otherwise war can happen. And that's what's happened now. We are at war, and we don't know how this is going to spread. I think one of the things that's going to impact markets very heavily is how the rest of the world reacts. How does NATO and the West react to this? What exactly are we going to do in the form of sanctions? President Biden will be speaking soon. It's going to be interesting to hear what he has to say, what the plan is, what the U.S. will be doing in this situation, as well as what our NATO allies will be doing. So keep that all in mind. Markets are going to be incredibly volatile. I don't know if you're going to see a lot of people doing TA right now, because to be honest with you, nobody can give you good TA right now. The only thing that anyone can do is pretty much watch the news and keep up with what's happening. And that's what you're going to see a lot of people doing. And I'm probably going to be doing that. So for now, I just wanted to give you the bare minimum of what I possibly could. Let's go ahead and do that. We're going to start with on-chain metrics for Bitcoin. Then we're going to look at the Bitcoin chart. Then we're going to look at the e-gold chart. Shouldn't be a long video because there's not a lot that I can go over. Okay. And make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, make sure you follow me on Twitter. That's where you're going to see the majority of my updates, because I don't make videos all that often. Okay, so let's go ahead and switch to this view here. Let's pull this up. Hang on just a second. Here we go. All right, so the first thing that we're looking at is the exchange reserves. We've looked at this metric numerous times on my channel and on my Twitter, and basically what you're looking at in the blue is the amount of Bitcoin on exchanges. If it drops, that means Bitcoin's leaving exchanges. If it goes up, then that means Bitcoin's going onto exchanges. Bear in mind, the more Bitcoin that leaves exchanges is normally more bullish, because that is less Bitcoin that can hit the market. When the amount of Bitcoin on exchanges starts rising, that's normally a bearish sign, because it means that people are putting their Bitcoin onto exchanges for a reason, and usually that reason involves selling. So keep that in mind. And what we saw yesterday is we saw about a $5,000 drop. So the price went from 37,000 down to about 34,800 in a matter of about an hour. And as that price dropped, we then started to stabilize. We hit a bottom of about 34,300 until the price began to recover. And right now the price is at roughly 36,100 as we speak. We saw that since the time of this announcement of war, declaration of war, we saw basically Bitcoin reacted by exchange reserves rising some, but that was actually before the initial drop. So this initial price drop likely came from traders and people who already had Bitcoin on exchanges ready to sell. In reality, if you zoom out on this, you start to notice that we're actually still in a massive supply shock downtrend. Even with war being so imminent, we have not seen a huge, massive rise come into the exchange reserves. That means a lot of people are just hanging on to their Bitcoin on cold storage. And that's really what you want to see, because this is a safe haven asset. It's being treated as a risk on asset. But in reality, I don't think it's a risk on asset. I think the market is treating it like that because it hasn't evolved yet. But what you end up seeing is if there are attacks on banking infrastructure, on the traditional financial system, on credit systems, I mean, this is the only thing that may remain available, right? And keep running. You know, other people may have to use cash for the time being. And if credit cards aren't going through, if the credit card networks are down, then your only option is to use cash. Or if a business you go to has internet access and accepts Bitcoin, well, you can use Bitcoin. So it's very interesting to see what could end up happening if we go the attack of that cyber route. And to be honest with you, even with just war in general, sorry, the camera is a little bit off. Even with just war in general, what ends up happening is you have people doing bank runs. Bank runs are essentially when people are scared and they start pulling their money out of the bank. Well, banks in general do not store enough liquidity for people to all do that at once. So if everyone starts going to the bank to draw out money, well, eventually the banks are going to run out of money, right? They are all very highly leveraged. They don't keep all the money on hand. So bank runs are a very dangerous thing, and they can end up taking down banks, because then you have millions of people potentially trying to log into banks at the same time to withdraw money and do transfers and all that kind of stuff. And the throughput overloads the networks and the servers can go down. So a lot of interesting things can happen here. Be aware of it all. Take your own contingency measures. Make sure that you are just in a position that no matter what happens, you have a contingency that'll last you for some time. So that, I think, is the most important thing, is just planning for yourself and your family right now and making sure you're making decisions that will allow you to transition through this time with the most amount of ease, because we really don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what the scale of this could be. It could end up being very, very bad, or it could end up being, it could end up not going to those levels. So we'll have to see. Right now, everything's up in the air, so just be very cautious. Okay, the next thing I'm going to look at here is the hash rate. The reason we're looking at the hash rate is because I want you to really see the strength of the Bitcoin network with everything that's going on. Well, hash rate is still at near all-time highs. So I'm actually going to move that. Hash rate is actually at near all-time highs. If we look at the Bitcoin price in orange, compare that with the hash rate, well, we know that this drop here was when China banned Bitcoin and banned Bitcoin mining. Since then, hash rate has been on a clear trend up, has broken all the previous all-time highs, and is actually still at, all-time high levels. The all-time high is actually a little bit higher than it is now, but we are at the top levels than we've ever been at. So what this tells me is that resiliency of the Bitcoin network is in place. I mean, it is ready to take mass adoption. If people start using Bitcoin because they have no other option for any reason, Bitcoin's ready to take that load. I think the value of this network being online and available is something a lot of people have misunderstood. They have looked at Bitcoin as simply a way to get rich. It's really not. For anyone who understands it long term, they know that this is not about getting rich. This is about not getting poor. This is about keeping your wealth somewhere where it can be stored, where long term it will be preserved so that you're not losing your wealth by keeping it in fiat currencies and other investments that simply just do not perform as well. They do not have a history of performing as well. So that's kind of what we're seeing. These are very important metrics, I think, with Bitcoin. If you look at the reserve flows, this gives us another picture of the reserves that we were looking at before. And really the key things to remember here is one thing here, we have in orange, the miner reserves. So this is kind of what miners are doing with their Bitcoin. The Bitcoin price is in blue, and then in red is the exchange reserves, which I just showed you. And what you're kind of seeing is as the price has been stable, the exchange reserves have been dropping. So in red, you've been seeing the amount of Bitcoin on exchanges going down. And in orange down here, what you're seeing is essentially, we get a better view of that actually, so you can see that a little bit better. Okay, so you can see the exchange reserves have been dropping, and at the same time, you are seeing that the miner reserves have been going up. They're kind of in a little bit of a short-term distribution phase right now, but overall, they've been in accumulation since 2021. We have seen just massive accumulation on all aspects. NVT ratios and network value to transaction ratios is essentially the P&E of Bitcoin, and if you were to look at it in form of a security. Now, when you compare it, when you look at the NVT ratio, the easiest way to explain this is the value of the network based on its market cap and transaction counts. And right now it's severely undervalued. So what you would expect is as price begins to increase, when that happens, should it happen, more than likely you will see that NVT ratio start rising. And right now the levels that it is at is nearly at the all-time lows, right? It's at the same levels that the NVT was at before we had the massive breakout at around 8 to 10K, taking us up to 60,000. So we are really, really undervalued when it comes to this metric. Leverage ratio, pretty self-explanatory at this point. In blue, what you can see is that we've had a massive run on leverage starting in December. Leverage went really high, and the leverage ratio has been kind of stable throughout all of 22, and we're kind of still at that level. There's still quite a lot of leverage in the market, so I would expect a lot of volatility due to that. Liquidations, lots of them. Just a ton of liquidations. What you're looking at here, very simply, in red, you are looking at short liquidations. In green, you are looking at long liquidations. So if we zoom out a bit and we start looking at what happened since yesterday, well, there has been quite a lot of activity as far as liquidations go. Kind of this entire week, we've seen a lot of leverage getting flushed out of the system. So keep that in mind. I would be very, very cautious with leverage trading right now because a lot of people are just getting liquidated. You know, this is not the time where you can really predict what's going to happen. Everything's a gamble. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the actual chart. So we're going to pull up the Bitcoin chart. We will redo our view so you can see it. So this is what we've kind of seen, all right, since the time yesterday that we started finding out about this war moving forward. Like we talked about before, we saw a drop from around 37,000 right here all the way down to about 34,800. We then bottomed out at 34.3. For now, that's a bottom. We don't know for sure. It looks very undecided. We did hit on the 4-hour oversold levels and then we bounced off, but we have been known to see things like this happen where we come down, we touch the oversold level, we have a little bit of a relief rally, and then we just plummet further. So I am not going to say here that this is over yet. I definitely think right now probably the best thing for most people to buy and hold on to, because of what could happen to banking infrastructure and just the fact that you can self-custody and own this asset yourself, is to buy Bitcoin. That's what I would do, and I've already done that for myself. I'm good, but I think other people that don't have any, this would be a time to gain a little bit of exposure, even if it's a very small amount, just so you have some. But who knows? Who knows if they're going to do that or not? But we have seen a little bit of a relief rally. It looks like people came in pretty large volume and started buying as the price dropped to 34,000. If you look at the volume right here at the bottom, you'll see the majority of the selling that we saw. Well, we beat that in volume very rapidly once the price dropped down to 34,000. So there was a lot of liquidity ready to buy it at those prices, and it did scoop up quite a lot. Prices back up to around 36,100, but to be honest with you, right now it doesn't mean anything until we see the price break 39K. This resistance area that you're looking at, we need to not only break this, but then what I want to see is I want to see us break past this long-term regression line, which as of now sits at around 30,800, and within a few days it'll be at 40K. So until we see us coming out of this resistance area and starting to flip these moving averages in a bullish direction, well, there's no reason to assume that we don't come back up to around 37,200, hit the 20 exponential moving average, and then just drop further, right? Go right down to 32K or 30K. It's entirely possible. I mean, the world's at war. You can't predict what's going to happen. The only thing you can say is that if we follow the current trend of getting resistance at the 20 exponential moving average and dropping, well, then there is the potential that we keep dropping. Now, obviously, if more people start looking at this as a safe haven asset now and realizing that this is something they need to own, well, then you could see a flood of people coming in and buying, at which point the price could skyrocket. And we don't know what sanctions are going to be put against Russia, but once those sanctions are in place, we don't know how they will plan to use Bitcoin. They could too. They've already legalized it. So we don't really know. Just keep it in mind. I think right now Bitcoin is going to be extremely volatile. We have a ton of resistance sitting ahead of us from 37 to 39K. So expect a lot of resistance there. And we do have our major support area starting to kick in when we zoom out. So you want to zoom out to a longer time frame. When we zoom out, you can see that what the support area that we really need to hold is around 31 to 33,000, which is this long-term support area. It's kind of served as our bottom since we came into these levels initially back in January of 2021. So this has been our very, very long-term bottom. You can see here, you can see it here, and you can see now we have not touched it. We bounced off the top of it, but if we do come down and touch it, well, then we're looking at around 30,800 as being a bottom, maybe around 31,000 actually. Now, there's no saying that we don't wick below this and go to like 28K and then come back into this zone. That's a very possible thing too. We've seen that happen numerous times here, but keep in mind, these events, these capitulations and sell-offs happened for other reasons that I think were not as serious as war. So the fact that during the start of a war, Bitcoin's holding this $35,000, $36,000 level is somewhat mind-blowing. So keep that in mind. This is pretty mind-blowing that we're holding this. I think it shows a lot more strength than people are giving it credit for. I mean, it's just wild. Absolute wild. Okay, so let's move on. We're going to take a look at eGold real quick. Now, bear in mind, I've shown you this before. There's not a ton we can do for eGold right now. eGold is going to follow Bitcoin like a lot of other assets, and it's probably going to have a lot more volatility in comparison. So when you look at the long-term chart for eGold, you're kind of seeing one thing, that we have come down now and we're touching this Fibonacci channel down at the bottom. Now, this is a very long-term fib, so I'm actually going to switch over to the weekly chart so we can see a much better view of this. Okay, so if you look at it this way, what you're looking at in the background, those lines moving up are the regression channels, and we've come out of those regression channels, right? So I actually need to go through and recalculate these and add some more regression channels so we know where our new regression channel bottoms are going to be. This is Tether. Okay. So we do know one thing, that this Fibonacci line here at $120 is a pretty key line of support. We have wicked below this numerous times and we have come back and held it. We have also hit that as a long-term resistance. We've broken above it and now we are coming back and testing it. So holding this 120 line I think is very, very important, especially when you look at that weekly chart. You can see that we have a ton of resistance at the 140 to 145 level. So this 120 level, if we lose it, yeah, we could definitely go down to around $100, $88. These are all possibilities because we did spend a lot of time trading there. Now, obviously, nobody wants to see that, but these are extenuating circumstances. The value proposition long-term, I believe, remains the same, but what's happening in the world takes precedence. And I think everything is going to be impacted by how Bitcoin runs. And I do think that a lot of things are on a massive discount right now. I consider eGold to be on a very steep discount. I think Ethereum's on a huge discount. I think Cardano's on a massive discount. You know, a lot of people don't give Cardano enough credit, but it's actually a very good blockchain addressing a specific use cases in different parts of the world. Now, granted, they have not executed with the level of functionality I would like to see, but I mean, for everything that I've used on it, it's worked fairly well. I mean, there have been issues, but it's worked okay. I think eGold is definitely on another level as far as blockchain functionality and even UI for users goes. But I think Cardano is also at a point where it should be valued higher than what it's valued now. But I do think that eGold should probably be equivalently, if not higher valued. So we'll see. I mean, we'll see how it goes, but I do consider it undervalued right now. I think Celsius is undervalued. I think Polkadot is severely undervalued. GRT is undervalued. And a lot of these are going to be undervalued because people are just getting rid of things that they find as risk. But that doesn't change the fact that as Bitcoin and DeFi become more prominent in the world and in the financial landscape, that a lot of these projects are going to be necessary. I mean, GRT basically allows crazy types of querying to be done on blockchains, and you can do a lot of different data analytics with it. So long term, if DeFi grows, that's going to be very important. You know, then you have Polkadot that's going to be doing a lot of interoperability work. Very important. So a lot of these projects have a lot of importance behind them, and they're being very undervalued. So, I mean, I would kind of look at this as a time where someone who has maintained a good set of cash reserves could start, you know, dipping their feet into different assets that they're interested in. It's a great time for that. A lot of us have expanded our, depleted our cash reserves and already bought as markets went down, not anticipating war. So, I mean, obviously, if you're in that position, it happens. You just continue DCAing and do what you have to do, you know? You just have to do whatever's best for you. Not financial advice, of course. I'm not telling you to DCA during a war. I'm telling you do what you think is best. Now, that's pretty much it for eGold. I mean, honestly, I can't tell you a whole lot more other than the fact that we can only look at long-term trends right now. And long-term trends show us a couple of key things, right? We see that we don't have a ton of support between $130 and $112. There's a gap here in support. So that means that if we lose 120 and we start dropping, well, then it looks like around $108 to $110 is going to be where we get our next major support level. And I think you're going to see a lot of buying in between the 110 to 127 level. I think that's very likely that you see a lot of buying there, but a lot of this is also dependent on what happens with Bitcoin. Bitcoin drops down to 25K for some reason, right? Let's say it has a massive fear sell-off, things get worse with the war, whatever, people just start selling their Bitcoin. Well, then at that point, I think you're probably going to see eGold go down to maybe 95 to $100, maybe even a little lower than that, maybe $75. And I think that at that point, you'll probably see Cardano drop down a little bit further, more than likely to the 44 to 45 cent level, where we see that it has some support levels built up. Maybe even 66 cents would be a decent area for it to drop. Ethereum, you could easily see Ethereum going down to around 1800. We have seen that be a massive bottom throughout the run up to these all-time highs. So coming back and retesting that again, not surprising at all. Polkadot, I think, has already bottomed out quite well, but it still has room to move down to around $10. So there's a lot of pain that can be felt as these markets keep dropping. So just be ready for it. Hopefully that's not what happens, but it could happen. We got to be realistic, you know, just manage your risk and be ready for these things. A lot of what I'm invested in long term, so I'm not worried about those investments. I'm just going to ride this out and let it wait because I still see the financial future going in one direction. Now, obviously, if war completely changes that, maybe my outlook will be 100% different a week from now. And if it is, I'll let you guys know. So keep up with me on Twitter, and I'll try to release videos as I can as often as possible over the next couple of weeks so that you guys can get some as unbiased as possible information that I try to provide. I think that's about it. All right. We've looked at Bitcoin. We've looked at eGold. Oh, Jesus. What am I looking at here? Okay. All right. We've looked at Bitcoin. We've looked at eGold, and we are good to go. Sorry. I thought I was looking at the wrong chart the whole time when I was giving you eGold TA, but it was the right chart. Okay. Guys, ladies, gentlemen, just take it easy. All right, this is going to be a crazy time. A lot of people are going to be suffering. Give them good vibes and, you know, do what you can to raise your kids to not turn out to be warmongers, you know, people who want war, and a lot of dumb stuff going on right now. You got a lot of people arguing and trying to justify things like, oh, no, we were right to do this or wrong to do that, like the left versus the right, all this stuff. It's so stupid. The way I see it is if people can't come together and figure out a way forward, and we're all screwed. So hopefully things do go well, but I will just say this. I said this to you before. Stress levels low. You live one time. Enjoy your life as much as possible. Take a walk. Get a workout. You know, stay fit. You never know how that's going to help you in this kind of situation. And just take it easy. You know, just try to live happily. You know, I made the mistake. I don't know if it was a mistake. I quit vaping this week. So as some of you guys know, I've been telling you on Twitter, I'm off nicotine now for like 4 days. Obviously, as soon as I go off nicotine, there's a war. Come on. It's ridiculous. I want to vape so bad. But this time, I'm not going back to it. This is it. I'm done with it. So we'll see how it goes. I'll maybe have some CBD and stuff. That's the only thing I can have. And, you know, it's not addictive or anything like that. But anyways, you guys, thank you for joining me. I appreciate you. Make sure you leave me a comment. Make sure you check me out on Twitter. Make sure you follow. And let me know what you think, all right? Hey, don't forget, link in the description for the Substack, too. Subscribe to my Substack. This weekend, I'm going to try my best to release another article and to release a podcast. And I'm working on I'm working on a bunch of stuff. I'm working on a movie script. I'm working on a novel. Like, we got a lot going on. So there's going to be a lot of stuff happening in the future. And I want you to be a part of that. So follow me everywhere so you can see what ends up happening. All right. And all the best. If anyone in Ukraine is watching this, anyone in Russia is watching this, look, we know that the people of these countries, most of them did not want this. So we feel for you. And honestly, I hope that you can live in a less oppressed state in the future. I hope we can get there. I hope you have democracy and you can vote for people and, it's better than what exists now. That's all we can hope. But, I'm sending you my positive vibes and I'm just hoping everyone's safe. I know everyone won't be, but I really hope that people will be. What can I say? That's pretty much it. Crazy times. See you guys soon. Like, subscribe, leave me a comment. Peace out.